This week on the Destination Angler.
I've fished some of the Pennsylvania spring creeks where you put down a pool and you're done for the morning. At Silver Creek, I've put down a pool and it's like going full steam 3 minutes later.
Huh.
So you might spook the fish, but there are so many insects, they're coming back. So don't despair.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to episode 67 of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Trout Routes, the #1 fishing app, helping you find new trout waters so you spend less time on the road and more time doing what you love, trout fishing. And by Anglers Coffee, perfecting the coffee experience for the fly fishing community and anglers everywhere with small batch coffee delivered to your doorstep. It's darn near perfect. And by J.P. Ross Fly Rods, makers of happiness, one rod at a time. Get outside and simply fish. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we're headed to Montana and the world-famous Madison River with a true industry icon who gives us the straight scoop on what's really going on there. And then we head to New York State for a tour of the Upper Delaware River system for the dry fly purist. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode of the Destination Angler on New Zealand with local legend and backcountry guide Mike Kirkpatrick with Latitude Guiding. Mike gives us a masterclass on landing giant trout on thin tippets on the South Island. And let me tell you, New Zealand is a trip you only dream about, trips of a lifetime that would take your breath away. You won't want to miss these shows. You know, I've really been blown away with how the show continues to grow and grow. We have listeners in every state, on every continent, and from time to time, you guys send me encouraging notes, like this one from Joachim from Sweden. Great episode. This podcast is my new fly tying companion. Or this one from Justin in Michigan. Steve, your podcast continues to be off the charts. Great job. Looking forward to the next one. And this one from Matt from Virginia. I listened today and booked a trip with the Hungry Trout, the guide service your guest talked about. I've talked about fishing the Adirondacks for years, and the podcast inspired me to make it happen. Yours is one of my favorites. Thanks for the great content. Well, thank you all for the notes, and thank you for spreading the word about the Destination Angler podcast. And today our destination is Silver Creek in central Idaho, and my guests are Matt Miller and Erika Phillips with the Nature Conservancy. Central Idaho is a fly angler's mecca, and it's here that the Nature Conservancy operates an 881-acre open-to-the-public preserve on Silver Creek. Silver Creek is a magical place with crystal-clear water, profuse hatches, and beautiful scenery where anglers the world over bring their A-game, often to be humbled by these wary trout. Matt is the Director of Science Communications for the Nature Conservancy and editor of the Cool Green Science blog. He is also the author of the book Fishing Through the Apocalypse, and a recipient of the Jade Award, the highest conservation writing honor of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. His works appear in numerous outdoor publications, including Fly Fisherman, Fly Fishing and Tying Journal, Field and Stream, and many more. Erika is the Watershed Manager for the Nature Conservancy's Idaho chapter. She leads a team that is implementing an ambitious 5-year plan to enhance the Silver Creek Preserve. She also works on water and land conservation and habitat restoration projects in the Wood River Basin. So let's hear from Matt and Erika as they share stories of cloud-like hatches of biblical proportions, botched casts, the Jack Hemmingway, conservation efforts, and tips on how to tackle this challenging spring creek. Oh, and for you budding outdoor writers and wildlife biologists, stick around to the end for some tips from Matt and Erika on how they made it. Well, welcome to the show, Erika and Matt. It's great to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here, Steve.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Oh, for sure. All the way from Idaho. One of my favorite states, for sure. Matt, I gotta start with you. I was reading one of your blogs, and you wrote a blog, I think it was called Fishing Odyssey, and where you fished in all 50 states. That sounds fascinating. And I'm kind of curious, Like, what were some of the stranger places you ended up fishing in some of those states?
Yeah. Well, I'm still working through that. So I'm at state number 32, but
Ah,
through that project and for the book I wrote, Fishing Through the Apocalypse, I have fished coast to coast. And I will fish anywhere. And so I have fished everywhere from sewage ditches in Miami to hot springs here in Idaho and Utah, where you literally never know what you might catch. I've caught African cichlids from Lake Malawi right here in Idaho.
oh, no kidding. Okay. And I'm kind of wondering, have you gotten into New Jersey yet?
I have not. I fished New Jersey last week actually, but
Oh, you
I
did?
failed.
Okay.
I failed to catch a shad. I was fishing with two other fishing writers, Stephen Soutner and Peter Kaminsky, and the shad were not running yet, so I'll have to return there.
You have to get back to now. Before you New Jersey people send me nasty notes, I do know New Jersey's got beautiful scenery and countryside, and even black bears. So I do know there's probably some great fishing in some of the foothills of New Jersey. And then Matt, I also saw that you tangled with a very large Lahontan cutthroat trout in Pyramid Lake. I was wondering if you could tell me about that.
Yeah, I cutthroat trout are my favorite fish, and Robert Benke, the trout expert, the lake trout expert, he identified 12 subspecies that are still swimming around the West. I've caught 11 of them.
Nice.
The Lahontan is my biggest, although what I love about cutthroat trout fishing is it's often these beautiful mountain streams and it requires
Right.
a long hike. Pyramid Lake's completely different. And I actually, I went and you use these, super large flies and a really big indicator. And so I chucked this thing out like into a rocky, area with a lot of cover. And then my indicator sat there. So it kind of felt like bobber fishing. And 15 minutes later, the bobber goes down, and I have the biggest cutthroat trout of my life on the line.
Really?
So the fish was great, but I will have to admit it was kind of anticlimactic compared to some of the places that require, road, tire churning drives and long hikes and gorgeous scenery. And, oftentimes the fishing isn't that difficult, but getting there is.
Right. Exactly. How did it fight?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it fought like a bulldog. And there were a couple times I thought it was going to bust me off. It wrapped around rocks several times.
Huh. Do you remember what fly you're using?
It was I don't even know the name, big gnarly thing with a lead head and tinsel on it. So,
Just sitting there, just suspended, just sitting there for 15 minutes. Really?
Yeah. There was it's a big lake, so, it's not tidal, of course, but with the wind, it was kind of bobbing
moving around.
It was bobbing around. Yeah.
Still, that's kind of crazy. Oh my gosh. And Erika, what is a watershed manager?
In my role at the Nature Conservancy, I work on water conservation and land conservation projects, as well as stream restoration projects. And my area of geography is the Wood River Valley and Silver Creek. So I am fortunate to get to go out and explore all these amazing places that I call home and be able to really work with local communities and stakeholders and be able to bring in a lot of different parties to work on conservation initiatives.
No kidding. I'm curious, when you're working with the local landowners, what kind of reaction do you get from them? Are they pretty conservation minded or not?
Yeah, I think for the most part, the ones that we work with they recognize the importance of these wide open spaces that we have and we're so lucky to still have in Idaho. And so for them, it's really important as a legacy to be able to maintain that open space and to be able to pass that on to their kids or their grandkids and really be able to maintain the character that we all moved to this area or grew up in.
Huh, no kidding. Because last year you had to actually shut the preserve down for a while because of high water temperatures, correct?
Yes, that was a very difficult decision for us,
I'll
but
bet.
we are in a drought cycle, with climate change and everything that's going on with water in the West. We are experiencing a drought period right now. We've had much less snowpack than usual, and then we haven't had a lot of precipitation in the past couple of years. And so all of that has just kind of conspired against us, and meant that there's less water in the rivers and in the aquifer, which feeds Silver Creek. And so, yeah, we were experiencing very, very low flows and really high air temperatures that were impacting all of the water quality for the fish. And so we tried to minimize stress on the fish in those really critical periods. And so we did have to close down fishing access for approximately a month.
A whole month. Okay. Well, there were a lot of hoot owl restrictions out west last summer. So we're all hoping and praying for a little better season this year. And I've been watching the snowpack numbers, and it looks like we're seeing lots of snowpack numbers in the 80s, some over 100%. So I don't know. What do you think? How's it looking this year?
Yeah, I have seen that in other areas. Unfortunately, here in south central Idaho, we're still pretty low in the Wood River Valley and our surrounding mountains. We did get a storm last week, so we're hoping for more. So we're better off than we were a month ago, but I'm going to stay optimistic that we'll get some precipitation.
Let's stay optimistic and vigilant, right?
Hmm.
So the first time I heard about Silver Creek was in the 1990s. And Walter, if you're listening to this podcast, you were telling me about you and your father went out there. This is back when we were just, newly married, maybe. And anyway, so he went out to Silver Creek and he just was raving about this place. I've never forgot. I've made a mental note that is on my bucket list someday. And then Matt, when I read your article in Fly Fisherman magazine, what month was this? February, March, and I thought, wow, this sounds and looks fantastic. So anyway, that was how I came to you, Matt, and I'm kind of curious. I read in your article that I think you wrote most depart humbled, and I wanted to ask you, what is it about this place that makes it where it can be a humbling experience?
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of factors, and it goes back. I mean, it's always been known as a humbling place. Jack Hemmingway, Ernest Hemingway's son, is one of the people who helped put Silver Creek on the map, and he was a very experienced fly fisher, and he walked away from the first time having been skunked, and said he realized that there is always a lot more going on at Silver Creek than you think. And I think that's true on any level you look at it. But, there's a combination of clear water, a lot of anglers, and a lot of food for the fish. I mean, a lot of food for the mayflies. And so it's humbling. And, I just mentioned going to New Jersey and not catching a shad. Well, the shad run hadn't made it there yet. And, I've been at other places where the timing's wrong, or there's a number of reasons you don't catch fish. But at Silver Creek, the trout are there, and chances are they're going to be feeding, and you're going to be seeing a lot of them feeding right in front of you. And so there's no excuses.
Right. What's the problem? It sounds perfect.
Yeah. So the fish are there and they're eating. And so then it's up to you. And I think that's the, big part of the allure, and also why it's so humbling, because when you walk away skunked, it's because of your own failings. And believe me, it's happened to me many times. And I've taken some great anglers fishing on the creek, and most of them have walked away humbled.
Do you still get excited every time you go, even though as you're driving there, you must be thinking, what kind of a day am I going to have?
Yeah, and it's a new experience every time too, because it is. I mean, it's not just the fish there; it's the total experience. But the fish have never disappointed me, even when I don't catch them. And the last couple of summers, I mean, obviously there are the challenges and the closure last summer, and the issues of climate change and this mega drought are big ones. But the fishing has just been excellent the last couple of years. So you never know what's going to happen. One of the stories I relate in that article are like, I totally flubbed this cast. And usually when you do that, you just see trout darting every which way when you slap a fly down on the water. And I mean, this was an ugly cast. And all of a sudden I saw like 3 fish charging across the pool to take this fly. I had never had that happen at Silver Creek. So one of the things I love is it always surprises you.
Yeah, I'll say. What was up with that? Did you ever figure out, like, you could botch a cast so badly and yet still catch a nice fish?
Yeah, I think this goes back to really paying attention to what's actually happening. Like with hatches, things aren't always what they appear. And so in July, there is the Troiko hatch, which is one of the really famous hatches on the creek. And it is profuse. I mean, it looks like it's snowing when it's a spinner fall.
Wow.
And they're tiny flies, and it can drive you insane trying to find the right one. But I put my nose down along the water, and I was not catching anything. And I noticed that mixed in were these pale morning duns that were quite a bit larger. And then as I kind of took a look back, and I saw the fish were keying in on those. Well, it wasn't that the fish were really spooked by my fly. It was just that I had the completely wrong fly. And wow, when I started casting out the fairly large pale morning dun, those fish just were hammering it. And so even though, those flies were outnumbered, probably 100 to 1.
Yeah, crazy. Just some powers of observation there might help a little bit.
Yeah, really paying attention to the water and your surroundings, and of course, paying attention in other ways, like to the drift, is very important as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. If you've ever looked for a good map to help you with anything from public access to finding the best trout streams in a given area, I highly recommend checking out this new app called Trout Routes. Just this spring, I was in the driftless region of Wisconsin, and man, was it awesome to have the Trout Routes app on my phone to help us do some exploring. Trout Routes made it so easy to find new water and access points that we never would have found without it. Trout Routes has mapped out every trout stream by state with very detailed access maps for every stream. They have over 15 different map layers with hundreds of thousands of access points. They also have local fly shops, the ability to take notes, and even local stream regulations, and you can download maps for offline use. Today, Trout Routes covers 23,000 trout streams in 23 states, including Montana, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Wyoming, Missouri, Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, West Virginia, and more. And they're adding 10 more states this year, including Utah and New York. So if you have an upcoming trip or are looking to explore nearby streams, I suggest you check out Trout Routes today on your Apple or Android phone. Don't leave home without it. Hey anglers, are you looking for a darn near perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Then do yourself a favor and check out anglerscoffee.com. That's right, Anglers Coffee is made by anglers for anglers, delivered to your doorstep, one batch at a time. They start with the very best coffee beans selected for their great flavor and responsible growing methods. Then each batch is roasted fresh daily, and the result is a wide selection of roast styles and coffees that will satisfy the most discerning coffee lover. And you gotta love these names: Willie's Blend, Caddis Blend, Brookie's Roast, Muddler's Blend are just a few of the deep, bold, and rich flavors you can enjoy every day. And a percentage of each sale goes to some great nonprofit organizations that directly impact the fly fishing community. So head on over to anglerscoffee.com to check out their great selection of coffee and the organizations they support. And if you're not 100% satisfied, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. That's Anglers Coffee. It's darn near perfect. Well, let's zoom out for a minute, and I'd love to hear more about this part of Idaho. I guess this is south central Idaho, but maybe what are some of the fishing opportunities in this area besides Silver Creek?
Yeah, so southern Idaho, if you're just driving along the interstate, you would maybe not think of it as a fishing mecca. It's high desert, it's sagebrush country, the land of sage grouse and mule deer, which is, for me, fantastic in its own right. But once you start exploring, there's a variety of rivers and creeks. Around Silver Creek, nearby is the Big Wood River, another great trout stream. The Boise River, which flows right through the city of Boise, has surprisingly good fishing. But the South Fork of the Boise River, which is nearer to Silver Creek, is a great tailwater. And then, about an hour or so north of Silver Creek, you start getting into the classic Rocky Mountain terrain. So you have the Salmon River, the Middle Fork of the Salmon River, which goes through the Frank Church Wilderness and offers world-class cutthroat trout fishing and mountain lakes. And then you get, a few hours to the east and you have the Henry's Fork and Yellowstone. So it's right in the middle of, all these names that most anglers recognize.
Yeah, right. It's incredible. There's a movie on Netflix. I think it's called The Fly Highway. And I remember watching this a year or two ago, and it's all about central Idaho. If you just drive right through the middle of it, all the fly fishing that's available in central Idaho, it just seems endless to me. I read that 70% of Idaho is government owned, and that's the fourth highest in the country. And I'm wondering, in your mind, does that translate into just all kinds of public access or no?
Oh, I think many of us, me included, live here because of the outdoor opportunities. And I live in Boise, but on the edge of a state-owned wildlife management area. And so I could walk 5 minutes from my house, and I probably, it would involve some road crossings, but I think I could stay on public land pretty much to Canada if I tried.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I wasn't ready for that one. I thought you were going to say 5 minutes is a trout stream, but yeah, all the way to Canada. That's fantastic.
yeah, and that's a 9-hour drive, but
Yeah.
you start hitting national forest after national forest, and it would take some planning, but you could do it. And now part of that, it's a tremendous outdoor opportunity, but I think what the Nature Conservancy does so well is that there are, everything's connected. And so whether we're talking salmon or elk or trout, they don't stay in one space. And
Right.
private lands are very important in that life cycle. And so the Nature Conservancy is working with ranchers and timber companies and other private landowners to make sure that, when elk need winter range, they don't have to stay up in those mountains. So the private lands play an important role in all this too.
Yeah, those corridors, right? Connectivity. Well, let's jump over. Erika, maybe you can help us with this. Can you talk about, like the character of Silver Creek? Like, where does it get its start? Where does it flow? How long is it? How big is it? Where should anglers, maybe focus their concentration or concentrate on?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So the Silver Creek watershed itself is approximately 70,000 acres, and it lies in the middle of the Wood River Basin. It's in, as you said, south central Idaho in the area that's known as Sun Valley. And it's bounded by the Peekaboo Hills to the south, mountains to the north and east. Our mountains around here are as high as about 9,000 feet, a little over 9,000 feet. And the creek itself is approximately 5,000 feet above sea level. And it's such an interesting system because, as Matt had mentioned it's a high desert ecosystem, but then in the middle of this flat area, there's this spring-fed creek that comes out of a series of artesian springs, and it just is entirely groundwater dependent. It's so interesting. So,
Yeah.
it's not directly connected to the Wood River, even though it's so close in proximity, but it is fed by the aquifer that the Wood River feeds into. And so it comes out of these artesian wells along the foothills, and then it just springs up in all these tributaries. And then Silver Creek itself is approximately 26 miles long. And so it flows to the east, and then it heads along the foothills, and then it takes a turn to the south when it comes into contact with the Craters of the Moon National Preserve to the east. And so then it flows out and it turns into the Little Wood River. So there's, lots and lots of miles of great fish habitat. And what's so interesting about it being spring-fed, unlike a freestone system, is that, it doesn't originate from snowpack directly, like all of our other creeks around here. They start off, up in the mountains, and then they are the result of melt-off. And so there's that kind of slushiness that is seasonal in those streams. But in Silver Creek itself, it's a year-round, fairly consistent flow. It's like clean, cool water. It has abundant aquatic plant life, and so that feeds all of the bugs and everything else that the fish flourish on. And so then it just has this abundant aquatic ecosystem environment, and it's such a clean, clear water. Like, it's just crystal clear, as Matt mentioned, which I think is what makes it so challenging for anglers. But by the same token, it's just really great water quality. And so what we're doing is definitely trying to maintain that water quality and improve it and increase some of the riparian buffers, because normally, if it were an environment that had not been impacted by humans, it would have all of this riparian, lovely, like overhanging willows and all sorts of different plants. And so we're really working with a lot of the landowners in the area to increase riparian buffers and add riparian vegetation. There's some areas of the stream that have been impacted historically by agriculture. There were some feedlots and some different cattle operations and stuff. And so we've been really working with the landowners to provide opportunities to do restoration along the stream. And so I believe there's been almost 55 different restoration projects over the past several decades. And so so we're continuing that effort because, a lot of the people that have purchased land along the creek are really, they're fishermen themselves, and they're really concerned about maintaining that ecosystem and providing, great habitat for fish and contributing to the angling experience. So it's very rewarding for sure. But
yeah, I'll bet.
Hi, everybody. This is JP of JP Ross Fly Rod Company. We love listening to Steve and his guests, and we hear over and over again how much people love fishing small streams and the magic and tranquility that they get from being on the water on these small streams. Well, it's inspired us so much that we make fly rods for small stream fly fishing, and we've been doing it for 25 years. We make fly rods as short as 5-foot 3-weight 3-piece called our rock hopper. We make rods out of E-glass, S-glass, carbon, and carbon fiber hybrid. Check us out at jprossflyrods.com. And do me a favor, send us an email and tell us why you love fly fishing small streams so much. We'll send you a gift of a sticker pack or hat, and we'll even give you a discount code for listening to the Destination Angler podcast. We sure do appreciate your time listening to this ad. Check us out at jprossflyrods.com.
Well, so tell me, what problems do feedlots and cattle ranches cause for a trout stream?
Yeah, so the feedlots, as you can imagine, there's definitely a water quality impact. A lot of times in the historic uses, which they don't currently have along the creek now, it would have been cattle in the creek, and so there was obviously issues with like fecal coliform and that kind of stuff. But in the past several decades, there's been a concerted effort to keep those impacts out of the creek, knowing that it is such a special place and it's so important for our angling and the ecosystem itself. So the other issues that can sometimes arise with cattle operations is if the cows are in the riparian zones, they can trample banks and cause bank instability, which then contributes to sediment and that kind of stuff. So we're really trying to just make a educated, like an educational program for people to understand those impacts because, they care about this resource long term.
Okay. And just for people listening, a lot of folks may know what riparian zones are, but can you talk about riparian zones, what those are, and riparian buffers? What's that mean?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So when you talk about a riparian zone, that's the area that's usually within maybe 20 to 50 feet of the edge of a stream bank. And so the reason that a riparian zone is important is because it provides a lot of different plant diversity. So usually you'll find willows, river birch, sometimes cottonwoods, depending on the system, and a lot of like brushy kind of cover, which provides habitat for wildlife and bird life. And then also it provides that overhanging cover for fish, which they prefer. It also, it keeps the water cooler because it provides shading and it's really important for stability. So like the roots of the shrubs holds the bank together. And so that's why those areas are so important for the stability of the creek and the creek, the fish life.
Okay. So while we're on the topic then, so maybe we can't control what the weather's doing right now, but there are things that we can control, right? And what are those things that we can adjust and control in a river like Silver Creek?
Yeah, so it definitely takes a village. It's really important for people to recognize that we are all part of the solution. So, for example, in a place like the Wood River Valley, we are all water users. We all water our lawns and we make these choices in our own homes. And then the municipalities, there's 3 towns in the area, and we're all making choices of how we're using our water. And so really we can all do, the things in our own lives, in our own homes to conserve water. And then from a larger scale in the community itself, we are working together to come up with some long-term water conservation solutions. So we're working with local farmers and ranchers and the other people that use irrigation water that comes out of our streams and our aquifer. And we're working to come up with good solutions for efficiency in the way that they irrigate, as well as, potentially looking at some water transactions where we would purchase some portions of water and then use it for aquifer recharge. So there's a lot of things that we can do, both as a person and also as like a community. And I think there are a lot of different programs across the West that are working on these types of water issues. And so, yeah, it's just kind of educating ourselves and understanding that we're all part of it.
Right. That's great. And I'm curious, what is the predominant trout species in Silver Creek?
I can handle that one too, if you'd like, Matt.
Fire away.
Sure.
So in the upper sections of Silver Creek, there are predominantly rainbow trout. So they are actually a stocked species. Rainbow are not actually native to Silver Creek. There was a variety of rainbow trout, which we call red band trout, that were native. And we think there are probably some that are still there in the creek, but they have interbred with the stocked rainbows and become naturalized. And so that's what you would see in the upper sections. Brown trout were introduced back, I believe, in the 1970s into the Little Wood River, which is what Silver Creek flows into. And those brown trout have been moving up into the system and getting further and further up. And so they are actually also another big, as you can imagine, a big species for people to enjoy catching. And you can find those pretty much throughout the system where there's public access. They've moved into all those areas.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's lots of other fish species in there, but those are definitely the wild trout that people like to catch.
And are they still stocking the main sections, like where the preserve is, or no?
No, there is a hatchery that's nearby, but I don't believe they're stocking the creek itself.
Okay.
But yeah, they have been doing that for several decades.
Okay.
And fish populations are abundant. I talked with Fish and Game recently, and they said that our fish populations are flourishing.
Oh, that's great. What do you have an idea what it is per mile? Like how many fish per mile?
It depends on the section. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there are some sections like on the preserve itself where there's so much habitat and so much water that we have lots of fish. And then there are other sections that are further down in the system where it's much more confined channel and deeper pools and that kind of stuff. So you'll see a lot of like bigger fish, but not as many of the small, fingerling, smaller fish.
I got you.
Yeah.
And Matt, where would you, where should anglers, kind of spend their time on Silver Creek?
The main preserve owned by the Nature Conservancy is still the classic fishing spot. And you have to check in with the preserve, but it is publicly accessible. So there is an easy registration. You just scan a QR code with your phone, and then you can access the preserve.
I see.
There's no requirement that you're a Nature Conservancy member, but I think if you enjoy the preserve, we would love to have your support.
Okay.
But the Idaho Fish and Game also manages some downstream access points. One is called Point of Rocks. There's also Silver Creek East and West accesses, and they are publicly accessible. You can actually even camp there. And they offer some different fishing opportunities. For instance, that's the section you would want to fish to catch the brown drake hatch. And the brown drake is a very large mayfly. It comes off in June. And it is one of the few times when I would say that you don't necessarily have to bring your A game. Like the fish are feeding like crazy on these giant mayflies.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's also a very popular time, and it's very difficult to predict. Even though I only live a couple hours away, it seems like I'm always early or late for that
right.
one. but it's a pretty spectacular hatch. It's also a section, those fish and game access points. I like to go there, early in the morning or late in the evening and try a woolly bugger or a streamer. And I've had really good luck doing that. So if you're looking for something a bit different than the match the hatch and find tippets, going downstream a bit to one of those public access points can be a nice way to mix it up.
Okay, I got you. And give me a range of, you can go anywhere from skunk to, what's a really good day on Silver Creek?
Yeah, that's a good question. In some ways you're limited by your skill, and of course, weather and other factors can come into play. But I have caught a dozen fish, during the trico hatch, and I've been skunked. I think there's a good variation, and I think any traveling angler knows, you can find a range of conditions out there. I've fished the Kenai River, where it's absolutely insane, and 40 or more fish a day is not out of the question. And I've fished the Spey River in Scotland, where I hooked and lost an Atlantic salmon, and a lot of longtime anglers were very jealous of that because it so rarely happens.
Wow.
But Silver Creek is a place you can catch fish. You may not. If you go expecting a 40 fish day, you're going to be disappointed. But on the flip side, it's not one of those like steelhead or Atlantic salmon fishing where just hooking a fish
is success.
It's something special. The fish are there.
Right. Or the lee tort. I fished a lee tort before, and the guy I interviewed on the lee tort said, just one rise in a day is success. And I thought, okay.
Yes. Yeah. I've fished there too. It is not that.
Okay.
And during the trico hatch, if you're in the right pool, I mean, you could have 100 fish rising in sight.
Oh my gosh. It's boiling.
It's boiling. I mean, there's really, it's what makes it so special. And there are times, I love catching fish. When I'm out there, I'm focused, but it's still one of those places where sometimes you just like take a breath and look around and say like, this is it, this is so awesome. And like with the hatch, like I've seen long-eared owls coming in and snacking on mayflies, and there's cedar waxwings feeding, and had moose waiting by me, like a moose in the sagebrush is just wild
cool.
on its own. So there's always a lot to look at and enjoy.
Do you have a story, a favorite moment on Silver Creek you can share with us?
I have so many, but one of my favorites actually doesn't involve fishing, although it involves a lot of fish. The manager at the time, Dana Gross, had this idea that we should snorkel the creek.
There you go.
And so we started at the bridge on the upstream part of the preserve, and we floated down to the visitor center. And we were nearly, even though we had it was 95 degrees out, but we only wore short wetsuits. And by the end of it, we were both blue and nearly hypothermic because the waters do stay that constant cold temperature. But it was super interesting because, I mean, it became apparent just how many trout there are on the preserve, but they aren't equally distributed, and there are some places where there are just lots and lots of little fish, and then some where there are a few big fish, and then some pools where it's just oh, wow, just lots of big fish. So it was just and it also was really cool just seeing that aquatic vegetation, and, you could see the little nymphs, and seeing why it was so productive. So that's a great memory for me. And I don't know that I would do it again because it was really, really cold, but it was a really great way to kind of get a perspective on all that's going on.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I've never done that. I mean, I've dunked my head under trout streams, mostly to cool off in the middle of the day. But that would be really interesting to kind of make a point at some point, in the next year or two, get your snorkeling stuff, or buy a snorkeling mask for $20 at Walmart, and then go snorkel a trout stream and just look around. I bet you would learn so much.
I'm just going to mention a caveat, though, that Matt was out there doing it for research purposes. We don't actually let people snorkel on the preserve,
Okay.
But I would strongly recommend it, and especially someplace where it's allowed.
Okay, well, let's say where it's allowed, you guys try some snorkeling. You might learn something, but other than that, don't do it. How did the Nature Conservancy preserve all get started back when? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I've written quite a bit about the history, and it actually, the Hemmingways play an important role in this. So in the 1930s, when Sun Valley Resort was really getting going, they kind of pioneered the whole outdoor destination idea. And they really were on the forefront of some of the public relations techniques, including inviting celebrities to come. And so, Sun Valley's known as a ski resort now. They were also at the time offering hunting and fishing at Silver Creek. That was part of their offerings. And so they would invite people like Ernest Hemingway and Gary Cooper to come and hunt and fish. And Ernest Hemingway actually wrote, a chunk of For Whom the Bell Tolls at the Sun Valley Resort. So Ernest, he loved hunting and he loved big game fishing, but he wasn't much of a fly fisher, but his sons were. And so, as I mentioned, Jack Hemingway just fell in love with this place. And when the resort put that property up for sale, he wanted it to be something more. And so he contacted the Nature Conservancy, and they purchased it in 1976. And one of the things I think is interesting is just how conservation has evolved and it has to evolve. And so at the time, it was like mission accomplished. We purchased 479 acres. Silver Creek's main stem is protected. At the time, the Nature Conservancy's motto was even preserving living museums of primeval nature. And I think this notion of museums is very interesting because it's like we're putting it, behind glass.
Yeah, I love it.
But of course, what we have found, and I hope what other conservationists, including anglers, have found, is that the work of conservation is never really done. And, just kind of protecting this piece of property did not protect Silver Creek. And so soon after that, the preserve expanded to 881 acres. Then, the Conservancy began working with landowners along the creek, protecting another 12,000 acres through conservation easements, and continuing to do the work like Erika and other staff are doing, looking at restoration, looking at riparian areas, looking at ways that we can make Silver Creek resilient in the face of mega drought.
Yeah.
So, and I think, as Erika said, it takes a village. Everyone has a role to play, whether you're a landowner or a local angler or a visiting angler. Everyone can play a part in that evolving story.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And the Nature Conservancy has more properties in Idaho. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Nature Conservancy works, around the state, not only on preserves, but, on a number of large-scale conservation projects.
Good to know. I happened to fish the property on the McCloud River back in the 90s. I'll never forget it. It was just gorgeous back in there. You had to hike a little ways back in there, and you just sort of popped out into this kind of a forested area with a cabin in the middle of it, right next to the McCloud River. It was beautiful. And you could just kind of, like you were saying earlier, you could just sign up and go out there and go fish. So I don't know if it's like that anymore, but it was wonderful. So tell us your story. Like, how did you end up as a writer? Kind of curious how that came about. And then you've lived in a couple different places, and I think you spent some time in Kansas, where I think you said you only caught one trout in a year
Yeah.
and had to get out of there. And I'm kind of curious, how'd you end up in Idaho working for the Conservancy?
Yeah, so I grew up in central Pennsylvania, and I was always an outdoors loving kid. I loved hunting and fishing and hiking and exploring. And I knew from a very young age exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, when I was 12, I went to a local outdoor sports show, and the Outdoor Writers Association of America had a booth there. And the guy manning the booth, a writer named Kermit Henning, he told me, like, set a goal to be a member, and I did right there. And actually, like 25 years later, I went to my first Outdoor Writers Association conference, and I sat down at dinner next to Kermit Henning, and I said, you told me to set this goal, and here I am. He couldn't believe it, but I'm very, as you may have picked up with my catching a fish in all 50 states and all these sorts of things, I'm very goal oriented. And so I set this goal, and it took me a while to get there. I actually started my writing career writing about the performing arts. But then I kind of got comfortable in that and realized I was getting away from my main path. So one day I just up and quit that job and decided to make a go of freelancing. And then I moved to Kansas, where my wife was teaching in college, and I was struggling as a writer and not catching trout. As you said, I actually found a stream that stocked trout in Wichita, and I went there, and it was
Who knew?
like this ditch running through like a sports complex, so like soccer fields and everything, and there are a lot of great parts of Kansas, and there's other interesting fishing. Trout fishing was not among it, but
Yeah.
I caught a brown trout there, and then these two kids walked up behind me and like started throwing rocks at me. So
Ruined the moment.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So there were great outdoor opportunities there, but it wasn't really working for me professionally. So I thought, well, I have the writing experience. During my freelancing, I had worked up, quips on environmental and outdoor writing. And so I started applying for what I considered my dream jobs. And the Idaho chapter was hiring a communications director, and I applied for that. And I had never been to Idaho before my interview, so they were hiring someone to, write and communicate Idaho conservation who had never been there. And
The Nature Conservancy was.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
For their Idaho program. And one of the questions was like, you've never even been to Idaho. Are you going to, leave here after 2 years? And I said, I promise you, I will not do that. And here I am 21 years later. I can say I made good on that promise.
Good for you.
I now work for our headquarters. So I run our national online publication, Cool Green Science, but I have stayed in Idaho, and I still write about Silver Creek and still go there every year.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, good for you. And wasn't one of your first days or the first day in the job at Silver Creek? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I wrote a press release about Silver Creek my very first day on the job, and then the second day I visited the preserve, and that evening I fished it.
Okay, you're thinking, well, this is better than Kansas, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So, Wichita to Silver Creek,
Yeah, and at the time, the Nature Conservancy owned Ernest Hemingway's home in Ketchum, and so I fished Silver Creek, and then I went and slept in Ernest Hemingway's bed, and I thought, okay,
did you really?
I do have my dream job. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, well, try to think what the connection there is. I guess one writer to another, sleeping in his bed.
Yeah.
And Erika, what about you? So you spent some time in Alaska, but moved back down here. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I kind of similar to Matt. I've moved around quite a bit. I actually grew up also on the East Coast, upstate New York, and then Miami. And so when I graduated from high school, I was like, I need to move west. And so I ended up in Colorado for a little while, and then found out about this seasonal job working in fisheries up in Alaska in Prince William Sound. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a dream. So I went up there, and I lived in a wall tent for an entire summer. And
wow.
It was bear country, like not just little black bears, but like brown bears, grizzly bears up there. And out in these remote places, we had to get out there by float plane, and it was so cool.
Well, that sounds cool.
Yeah, that was when I first got my real taste of what fisheries and aquatic biology looked like. So I had been a kind of a general bio major. I was pre-vet and realized that wasn't the career path I wanted, and found out about, this career. And I was like, ooh, this is really fun. I get to be outside. I get to tromp around in creeks and rivers, which I love, and work with fish and hold fish. And so, yeah, it was really cool. So I spent several years up there working seasonally, and then moved to Colorado, and then ended up back east in North Carolina for grad school, and then went back to Alaska and worked up there for several years for the federal government, working in protected resources, doing stuff with salmonids and marine mammals, and doing a lot of different habitat restoration projects and stuff. And then we loved where we lived. We were in Juneau, but after my son was born and he was about 2 years old, we were driving down the road one day. He was in his little car seat, and we had so much rain. It was like 30 days nonstop rain. And the sun came out like through a crack in the clouds, and he started crying. He's like, oh, my eyes, oh, my eyes. And I was like, oh, you've got to get out of here.
My son doesn't know what sunlight is,
exactly. He didn't even know what sun was. So my husband he worked for the Forest Service, and he heard about a job in this place called Sun Valley. And we're like, oh my gosh, we don't know anything about it, but let's go check it out.
Sun Valley, here we
And
come.
so, yeah. And so here we are 14 years later. We moved here sight unseen, and we just love it. Idaho is just such a magnificent state. It's got so much going on for it. I mean, there's just like everything you could possibly want to do in the outdoors is here. You know, we have skiing and fishing and hiking and mountain biking and rafting, and it's just so amazing. So I feel very, very blessed to live here and to be able to work to help protect those values that we love.
Right. Good for you. And gosh, thank you both for the work that you all are doing to help all of us in preserving, the natural resources and in particular, fishing destinations. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, Matt, let's go back over to you and let's get into some of the details on the technical side of fly fishing. So let's just start with the hatch chart. So you mentioned the brown drakes and the tricos being big ones. Can you take us through the seasons? What are the major hatches that anglers should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so the brown drakes come off sometime in June, and the tricos start, generally mid-August, mid-July through August. But mixed in, you have the Baetis and the pale duns, both of which may not be as profuse. Both the brown drakes and the tricos, and we're talking masses, like just clouds of mayflies. The Baetis and pale duns, I've found, generally they can be mixed in with other hatches, but they're also, what I would call more typical Western hatches, where you have good numbers of mayflies coming off, fish feeding in pockets, kind of probably not unfamiliar if you spend any time on a trout stream.
Sure.
But I also think, in summer into fall, there's great terrestrial fishing. So beetles, small ant patterns, and even damselflies can all produce.
Okay.
And sometimes there's an even weirder hatch, and that's voles, which
the
are
vole hatch.
Furry mammals. And so I should note, you cannot fish on the preserve at night, but you can fish on those fish and game access points. You can camp there, and tossing out a big furry mouse pattern, deer hair mouse, it can sometimes be a great idea. And there was one period a few years ago when there were just voles everywhere, and everything was out there eating them. Hawks, owls, coyotes, rattlesnakes. And I was over there for work, and I was staying on the preserve, and I took a walk at night, and you would just hear this little splash of a vole followed by a tremendous one of a trout feeding on it. And
wow.
I know when Fish and Game has, they periodically will sample a couple of the big brown trout to see what they're eating. And, there have been a few times when they have found multiple voles in the brown trout's stomach.
Yeah, they're meat eaters.
Yeah.
So I recorded a podcast in New Zealand, which is coming up here in a couple of weeks. And the guy said that every couple of years he calls it the vole hatch as well. And you're just overrun with voles. Like they're literally climbing over your shoes as you're standing there. And there's just a lot of voles, and it's what those big trout feed. So I think it's a common thing for trout everywhere.
Yeah. One of the things I write about a lot for the Nature Conservancy is what I call weird nature. So like just weird things that happen out there. So I have like biologists who send me like any weird thing they find out there, because I'll cover it. And there was a biologist at Togiak National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska, and were sampling rainbow trout and what the rainbow trout there were eating, and they found a rainbow trout that was 21 inches, so a good sized fish, but not gigantic. And this thing had 19 shrews in its stomach.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So, and they have since done more studies, and they found there that the trout and the grayling actually key in on shrews. Because the shrews, which are small mammals, like insectivorous mammals, and they live along the stream, and they fall in and fish eat them.
Yeah, right. What's your favorite mouse or shrew or vole pattern?
I like the standard deer hair with a weed guard, leather tail pattern.
Okay. And weed guards, because is it difficult to nymph, like hopper dropper type of a setup or a dry dropper because of all the vegetation?
Yes, it is. The vegetation is profuse, and nymphing is, and euro nymphing has become so popular. It's not the place to euro nymph, in part because on the preserve, actually, you can't use a hopper dropper. You can only use one barbless fly.
Right. Okay.
It's a great, fly fishing purist spot. And so most people use dry flies. This past summer, I botch a lot of things on Silver Creek. So I spooked this pot of large rainbow trout, but they kind of went back in formation at my feet, and they weren't feeding on the surface, but they were just like swimming there, very close. And so they were in this deep trough just downstream of where I was. I could see them there, and nothing else was really going on. And so I clipped off my dry fly and put on a beadhead scud just on a lark and just drifted it down through this trough. And immediately one of these fish took it. And I was so surprised I didn't hook it, but drifted it down through again. And then another fish ate my fly. And I hooked several fish right out of this same pod. Again, not what you would think out of Silver Creek, but I think sometimes a place like Silver Creek can psych you out. Like you go in like, oh, it's going to be so difficult. And sometimes what you need to do is mix it up. And sometimes you just need to keep in mind, like, okay, there are fish here and they are feeding, so they can be caught.
Right.
It's not like a scenario where you're wondering if the fish are there. And so sometimes, mixing it up a little can teach that lesson better than like just sticking to the dogma.
That's a great tip. I'm curious, what other fly patterns would you say are must-have fly patterns? It probably depends on the time of the year, but in general, what are your top confidence patterns?
Well, I think when you're fishing the trico or really any hatch, it pays to have a variety. So the tricos are, very small, like 20 to 22 or even smaller. But it's not just the size. I think making sure that you have duns, you have parachutes, cripple patterns, and of course the spinners. Mm-hmm. And I think having spinners of any of the hatches you're likely to encounter is key, because there are spinner falls during the summer most days.
Okay. So what about some of the other patterns? What else do you like?
Well, I think having a similar selection of Baetis and pale morning duns, and also some of those terrestrials.
Okay. Does foam work well on Silver Creek, or do you kind of have to be more realistic?
I think it depends. I like a small parachute ant, and I know other anglers like the deer hair type beetles. I generally have not used the foam, but again, that might just be like for the same reason I haven't used nymphs. Like there's that mental block, and maybe that's just what you need. Damselflies are like such a big, gaudy blue fly. Like like there can be that mental block. Like this could never work, but I've had that work.
Interesting. Would you have a damselfly pattern that you like, and how big?
Yeah, they're a fairly large fly. I'm sorry, I don't even know the name, but it is kind of like a parachute type tie.
Okay.
With a little, like kind of a thin foam tail.
Right. Okay. I wonder would you be willing to snap a picture of some of your favorite patterns and we can put them up on our Destination Angler Facebook and Instagram page to let people take a look?
Yeah, you bet.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, good. There you go, folks. We'll put those out here the week the show goes live. And what about tippets? How important is it to, get down? I'm assuming you're down to 5X, maybe farther.
Yeah, it's always a that balance. I like 5X and I have gone down to 6X, but I also I don't want to play big fish gingerly, especially in the heat of the summer. So like working that balance. And what I have found is that you can go as light a tippet as you want, but there's no substitute for a good drift.
Ah, no kidding.
Yeah, downstream natural looking drift wins the day.
I see. And are you doing downstream presentations on Silver Creek for the most part, or can you kind of get off to the side and cast at an angle up over a fish?
Downstream is the classic and the most effective, but when the water's boiling, I like to cast wherever they're rising, and I've seen, over the years, like every kind of reaction to my cast, from fish scattering in every direction to I've had a number of times like a fish, it's just like mowing down, it's like sitting there in current, its mouth's just moving, like gulping down these trichos, and then my fly drifts over, it will dip down and then come back up and resume. I've had that happen.
Yeah.
And one of the good things also, I should say, so the trout are spooky, but it's not like, I've fished some of the Pennsylvania spring creeks where you put down a pool and you're done for the morning. At Silver Creek, I've put down a pool and it's like going full steam 3 minutes later.
Huh.
So you might spook the fish, but there are so many insects, they're coming back. So don't despair. It's not like a one and done type deal.
So there is some forgiveness on Silver Creek, it sounds like, by the fish.
Yeah, not so much for the cast, but they'll come back.
They'll come back. I got you. Okay. Well, what's the best piece of advice you ever got for fishing Silver Creek?
Oh, I think, remembering that at the end of the day, they are fish and they are feeding. And, what I said earlier, to pay attention what's happening on the water, not what you think is happening, but what is actually going on. Because, one of the great wins for conservation is it has preserved this complex system.
Yeah.
And whenever I am in a complex ecosystem, like you realize just there are multiple layers to everything. And so with a mayfly hatch, there's just all this complexity. And so, the urge is like you see all these feeding fish and it's like, I have to get a fly out there. And it's like, take a minute, relax, look at the water, think about how you might want to cast. The fish are going to be there. They're going to be feeding. So take your time and think it through. I think my early years there, like I was so eager to get going. I'd look at this, I'd tie on a trico pattern and then wonder why I wasn't getting hits. And now I just slow down, enjoy the moment, and pay attention.
Yeah. And do you find that the hatches at Silver Creek are going for hours and hours on end? Or, for instance, I know in Michigan, where I've done a lot of fishing, like that brown drake hatch is pretty quick. It's not hours and hours long. Other hatches can be 45 minutes of rising fish, and then that's it for the day. What's it like on Silver Creek? Are they longer?
They can be. The trico hatch can, not so much as last very long, but it ebbs and flows over a morning. And the other thing is that, I should note that, if I say, the hatch is going to last for hours, then this summer it will last for 15 minutes. It isn't. It's also a dynamic system, and and some years the tricos are more profuse than others, and so you never know for sure. I don't think there are hard and fast rules. I think there are anglers who come with expectations, whether it's size of fish or length of hatch. And what I found with fishing is having like this firm image in mind of how things are going to be is a sure way to disappointment. And I've fished in a lot of places, and kind of going in and being open to the whole experience and being flexible are, to my mind, the key to a successful fishing trip.
That's a great way to kind of gauge success on a day, kind of the day's going to deliver what the day's going to deliver, right? And so were you successful in that environment of that day? It's sort of, I had a guide once tell me, fish at the pace of nature. And I love that. I think that's kind of what you're talking about in a way.
Yeah, there are always going to be factors out of your control, but I think at Silver Creek, what anglers have found, and I try to talk to people who are visiting, and so often, I've met anglers there from Europe and from Japan, and they often just have a huge smile, and it isn't even about what they have caught. It's just being in this magical environment that is conserved, for future generations. And, there are surprises. You're walking through sagebrush and you come around a bend and there's a mama moose. So you're like it looks like this desert, and there's a moose, and there are sandhill cranes overhead, and, waterfowl, and bald eagles, and and then, these fish rising in front of you. So it's a magical place. I mean, there's no way around it. I don't know how you can go there and not fall under its spell in some way.
No kidding. No, that's great. And Matt, I'm curious, could you, any advice that you could give people out there who are thinking about being outdoor writers? What's your best piece of advice?
Well, I think there are a lot of parallels to fishing, really, and partly is that, again, there are factors out of your control, but there's really no substitute for putting the time in. You'll get rejections, and lots of them. You'll have people who rather harshly critique your efforts, but if you put that time in and adapt, you're setting yourself up for when that perfect opportunity does come.
That's neat.
Always thinking, just as with fishing, there are a lot of days when things don't go right. But if you are like kind of moving forward every day and making, even if it's just a little advance, when you hit that perfect day, then you've done what you've done to, put yourself in that position.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Erika, I'm curious, do you have some words of wisdom for people who are considering a career in the field, maybe in biology or doing some things that you do?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think definitely stay open to the possibilities of working in places that you would never expect. Just put out, like, cast a wide net on job opportunities, and, you know, accept those jobs that are kind of for grunt pay, but you're going to be doing something that's really cool in a place that you're going to grow to love. And some people will go into it knowing that they just want to study fish, and some people are like, well, I kind of like fish, I kind of like wildlife. So figure out like what you like in those types of jobs, and volunteer for sure, because all of us in the nonprofit world love volunteers, as you can imagine.
That's right.
And so that can be a great way to get your foot in the door, just by volunteering for your local chapter of Nature Conservancy or Trout Unlimited, and then
Amen
you
to
make
that.
those connections. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Volunteers make the world go around. You don't think they do, but think about your kid's soccer team, right? Like, who's coaching that soccer team? Can you step up there and give them a hand? I coached for years and years. I was amazed at the number of critiques you got, and the low number of hand raises when it came. Yeah, I need an assistant coach. Just silence. It's like, yeah. Lots of advice, not much else, So, well, that's great. Well, gosh, thank you all so much for being on the show and the work that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's always fun to talk about Silver Creek.
Oh man, goodness. And I'm curious, where would anglers base their operations? What are the towns in the area where that might have fly shops or restaurants, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so nearby is Sun Valley, and there's this Haley, Bellevue, and Ketchum are just to the north of Silver Creek, and they have the full range of lodging, restaurants, and fly shops. It's an outdoor recreation mecca, and they're all small towns, but you walk down the main street of any of them, and you will have whatever you need for whatever outdoor activity you want to pursue.
All right. So they can get you dialed in. How about that? So where can people find out more about Silver Creek and the Nature Conservancy?
Well, for information on the preserve and for all the great work that the Nature Conservancy is doing in Idaho, you can find us on the web at nature.org/Idaho. And that includes information on visiting the preserve and a lot of other useful information about the area. And Silver Creek Preserve has its own Facebook page. So you can find the latest information on the preserve. Just search for Silver Creek Preserve on Facebook. And it has daily updates, including information about the fishing. And I also put in a recommendation for the publication I edit for the Nature Conservancy, Cool Green Science. You can find that at blog.nature.org, or you can search for Cool Green Science. And it includes the weird nature stories I've mentioned, and also the 50 Fish in 50 States quest that I'm on, as well as a lot of other conservation and nature stories from around the globe.
Well, once again, thank you so much, Matt and Erika, for being on the show. It's just great to have you, and I wish you both extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And thank you for listening. We'll be sure to post info on Silver Creek and the Nature Conservancy on our Destination Angler website, and pictures of Silver Creek and Matt's top fly picks on our Facebook and Instagram pages. You can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaig50@gmail.com. And you can support the show by spreading the word and telling your buddies. As always, our music is by Brothers Fountain. Hope you joined the show, and we'll see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.